Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we are live with a very special guest, author Brigid Kemmerer. Brigid is the New York Times bestselling author of more than a dozen dark and alluring novels like Defy the Night, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and Letters to the Lost. Her stories always feature complex characters facing the challenges of life, both in realistic settings and rich fantasy worlds, making her a beloved author among young adult readers. A full-time writer, Brigid lives in the Baltimore area with her husband, her boys, her dog, and her cats. When she's not writing or being a mommy, you can usually find her with her hands wrapped around a barbell. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Your family, I hope. I mean, and I'm not with my kids. I'm holding barbell.
No, that would be wrapped around a neck.
Well, in your bio, like it's funny because it says you're a beloved author of young adults. I'm no young adult, and I love your book so much.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. But here's one thing before we get started. The questions that I will say is I love that your young adult books are actually young adult.
Yes.
I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I go to the used bookstore and I'm like, I would never let my teen read that book. Right. And, I like that there's a little bit of romance in your books, but, anything that does happen is very closed door and, it's appropriate really for, I would say like 12 and up, as long as they can handle the socioeconomic parts of things. But yeah, I mean, thanks for being a young adult author in the young adult world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that you started there, especially right now, because, there's so much conversation right now about book banning and what's appropriate for young people to read.
Mhm.
And because I spend so much time really thinking about, I am a mom. I do have teenagers in the house. I spend a lot of time thinking about what young people read, what kids should be reading. I think about, what I read when I was a kid. I do think reading is absolutely one of the safest ways to explore and discover pretty much anything, because, our imagination is only ever going to take us so far. It's not like watching something on a screen. Once you see something, you can't unsee it, right? But reading, you can only imagine it as viscerally as you can, right? And my husband and I were even walking the other day, and he was talking about a Stephen King novel that he read when he was in high school, and I think it was Misery. And he was talking about how when he read the book, there's this part. Well, I'm not going to get super graphic on your podcast, but he was talking about this part where when he read it, he was like, it's not that bad. He said he read it when he was like 15, and then he saw it when he was 17 in the movie theater, and he was like, that's awful.
Yeah.
Like, just
way worse than I thought.
Yes. And I think that sometimes when adults read books, and I'm talking more about violence and things like that, when adults read books, we come to it with these adult sensibilities because we have so much more life experience, and we're reading things that kids are reading, and we're like, whoa, kids should not be reading this. Whereas kids are like, oh, cool. Right. Like,
Right.
Because they don't have the life experience. And I think a lot about that, especially when I write like intimate scenes. And I know that I have, I do have 11 and 12-year-old readers. I got the cutest email from a 5th grader who was like,
oh my gosh, I love
you might
that.
not think that I am old enough to read your books, but I absolutely am. And I was like,
that sounds like something I would have said as a 5th grader.
Right. And I have like a 6th grade son, and I'm like, I could see him so writing this like saucy little email to an author. You might not think I should be doing this, but I can.
It makes me feel like they've had that conversation with their parents.
Exactly.
I'm like, you know what? I'm going to talk to the author herself about this.
Brigid, did you reply and tell them it was okay?
I haven't written because I just got it the other day.
Okay.
And it was just such a cute email. And I know that I have readers like that, and I love that, but I know that I also have readers who are adults. So I'm so careful in my crafting of things where if you're an adult who knows,
right.
you know. But if you're 11, you don't. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I spend a lot of time thinking about that. So I really appreciate, what you said, where it is appropriate for young adults, and kids who might not really be ready with, and where things are closed door, but if you're an adult, you definitely get the implications.
Of course. And you can tell your husband that I read Amityville Horror when I was 12. and didn't sleep for weeks. I mean, that is still one of the scariest books I've ever read. But I mean, I also read Stephen King at, 14, 15, and
I did too.
I didn't think anything of it, but you're right. There's a scene in Misery when you see it, you're like, holy smokes, I can't believe I read that and was just cool with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It's wild how, like, when you read it, it's just different. It's a different experience.
It is.
It's nice. My oldest is a 4th grader, and it's nice to be able to trust the media that comes in certain categories, that they actually belong in that category, like we're talking about. Because I can't read every book he wants to read. I can't watch every show. I mean, maybe I should, but I just can't. So it's nice to feel like, well, at least with this author, or at least with this, Disney shows or whatever, I can trust that it's going to be appropriate for him. If it's rated TV, PG, or whatever it is, or a YA book, it's actually going to be a YA book from this author. We thank you.
Sure.
I'm just repeating the same thing that we already said.
No, I mean, we mean it though as parents, right? And I mean, as adult readers, we read some pretty saucy stuff, but we also can handle it, right? So
most of the time.
So can you tell us a little bit about when you knew you wanted to become an author, and really how you got started and you were able to follow that dream?
Sure. I mean, I have always loved reading. I've always loved writing. When I was a child, I used to read all the time. I was very much, this nerdy, bookish kid who was always at the bookstore, always at the library. We moved quite a bit when I was growing up, so I was always a new kid, always a little bit of an outcast. I think something that was really pivotal for me growing up, as far as becoming a writer and becoming an author, is when I was around 12 years old. We had a librarian that we knew very well, because again, we were constantly at the library. And this was back in the early 90s. And if you imagine the YA section in the early 90s, it was practically non-existent. You had maybe a little bit of Christopher Pike. This was when that was just starting to become a thing. You had like some Lois Duncan, just not very much. And that was kind of like hidden in with the children's books.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a children's librarian. This was in Montgomery County, Maryland. And I thought she was amazing. And she was beautiful. She had this long curly red hair, and she was from England. She had this amazing accent. And you can imagine 12-year-old me, like, loving stories, and this librarian who knew every single book in the library. Not really, but I thought she did. And she told my mom, oh, well, I'm writing a book and it's going to be published. And I thought this was the coolest thing in the world, that this woman that I knew was also a writer and was going to have a book published. And my mom was like, well, we'll buy a copy, of course. And she did. And it was a young adult novel. And that book was The Silver Kiss by Annette Curtis Claus. It's a book that I think is still in print. Her probably more popular book is Blood and Chocolate, which I actually think went on to become a movie. But I loved The Silver Kiss so much. I read this book so many times. I could quote you lines right now. And it was so influential to me that just this ordinary woman that I knew, like, wrote a book and it got published. And, just seeing that just anybody could do it. When I started high school, I was just constantly writing. I really wanted to be an author. I was always writing, always looking into what it would take to get published. And what it takes is a tremendous amount of rejection,
Right.
and, and then, because I was in high school, I, chased other things. I ended up, going to school. I started working in finance. And I remember when I got married, I was still always writing. My husband would play online poker, and I would sit there and I would tap on my laptop and write stories. And he would be like, you're always writing these stories, are you ever going to do anything with them? And I'd be like, well, you're always playing online poker. You're ever going to win any money?
If you could win us some money, that'd be great.
Right.
And, he was like, no, you should try, like, you're always writing these. So I started looking into it again, more seriously than I ever had really when I was in high school, and started going through the whole rejection rounds again and again and again, and eventually did the whole thing. I'm sure other people have talked about on your podcast too, the whole finding an agent, hundreds of rejections. And then I finally found an agent, and the first book I got an agent with, that one didn't sell. So I had to write another book, and then that one eventually sold. It just took forever, but I love it. I love writing, and I love storytelling, and I love my readers. And now my 16th book comes out in January. I don't know. I love it.
Which
It
I
feels like a
can't
dream
wait
come
for,
true.
by the way.
Oh,
I'm like counting
thanks.
down the days. It's in
Me
my
too.
pre-order. Yeah. And I will tell you, I finished the second book in the Defy the Night series, and I went to Libby to get the third one, and I was like, wait a second. Wait, where
I'm
is this book?
sorry.
And like I legit text messaged them, and I was like, I'm about to cry. I was really looking forward to
Sorry.
That's okay, because I went and pre-ordered. So now
Thanks.
instead of getting it from Libby, I'm supporting the author, which is more important. So, but like when you finish a series and you're like, I must get the next one right this second. That's how I felt, which is a good feeling to have. But January can't get here close enough, right?
I know. I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
So your books are heavily themed around social disparities and lack of access to healthcare. Can you tell us a little bit more about writing about these very real issues in a fantasy world, and why you choose to do that?
Sure. This is a great question. I love it. One of my favorite things about fantasy, especially in YA, is that you can take something really complex and boring, and you can make it really accessible and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the reasons that books like The Hunger Games was so fascinating and so popular and so accessible. You can take pretty much anything and wrap fantasy around it, and suddenly it's escapist, but you were still reading about the same exact kind of themes. I really love writing in two different points of view. Obviously Defy the Night has Prince Korik, who is coming from the the elitist side, where he is the royal, and they are in control of the medicine and everything. They have access to power and wealth and everything that everyone needs. And then we've got Tessa, who basically has nothing, and everybody is sick, and they don't have medicine or money or food or
I have
anything.
to say, Brigid, it hit a little close to home reading this right after the pandemic. Or, I guess we're still technically, COVID is still happening, but I read it kind of right when the world reopened, and I was like, oh, this is really close to home right now.
It was tough because, and I wrote the first draft before any of that had even happened. The first draft was done in, I don't know, September, October of 2019. And I had turned it into my editor. And I remember in January of 2020, she had sent me her edit letter and said, and at the time I was working on A Vow So Bold and Deadly, and she said, don't even open this, don't do anything with it, because we really need to work on A Vow So Bold and Deadly. And I said, all right, I won't mess with it. So I really didn't even read any of her in-depth notes, just her cover letter. And I went back to that in like July of 2020.
Oh my gosh.
And reading her notes, and one vividly sticks out to me, where there's a note in there that's like, we really don't know how people would react in a full-scale illness situation.
Just like you wrote it.
And it was really kind of wild having to go back through and do basically do revisions of the book, and really trying to tackle that while we were living through that kind of experience. And there were things that we did have to change, because I didn't, especially when we started to promote the book, every time I would talk about it, I would be like, this is not COVID. It's not COVID inspired. Right. It's really, even the whole point of the book is not, it's not a COVID allegory. It's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I loved it, but like I said, I was like,
thanks.
Oh, gosh, I think we just went through this. Like,
yes.
Yeah, but especially, Defy the Night is just something that everyone should read. I recommend it all the time.
Thanks.
But I do want to talk a little bit about A Curse So Dark and Lonely in that series. And I'm someone who's very vocal about living with the chronic illness, and I'd really love to hear more about your choice to write about a character with cerebral palsy.
Sure. So in A Curse So Dark and Lonely, obviously, Harper, who is it's a very loose Beauty and the Beast retelling, and my beauty, Harper, has cerebral palsy, and she when I was coming up with her character. She's from Washington, D.C. And when I was coming up with her character, I knew that Prince Ren was going to be cursed with magic. And I knew Harper was going to get to his castle and meet him and see everything about him. And I knew she was going to be like, you say that you're cursed, but you live in this amazing castle in this amazing kingdom with basically everything you could ever want. You're not all that cursed, dude. You know, what is your problem, right? And I really wanted to juxtapose that with Harper's character. And I wanted Ren to look at her and, you know, see, you know, this scrappy girl from the streets of Washington, D.C., and see, you know, that she walks with a limp and that she's not quite as capable, and that she has some limitations. And, you know, whereas she's basically fighting for her life. And I wanted him to be like, you know, basically like, what is your problem, girl? You know, like, what, you know, how, you know, what is wrong with you? And I could not, in the beginning, I couldn't think of what to do with Harper. Like, what, you know, what challenges would I give her to make that juxtaposition happen? And when I was growing up, I had a very close friend named Erin who had CP. And we grew up riding horses together when we were teenagers. And she had read, you know, all of my books up to that point, you know, and she was always like, you know, write me into a book. And I remember I texted her and I was like, this is what I'm thinking. And this is what I'd really like to do with this character. Would you help me kind of like springboard my research? And she said yes. And that's kind of, you know, where it took root. And I remember I would send her, we had lots of fun text exchanges, like, all right, if you needed to rescue someone and leap off of a galloping horse to tackle someone, do you think you could physically do that? And she was like, I could, you know.
What a great resource.
Yes, it was amazing. But then with creating Harper's character, since I don't have CP, it was really important to me. I didn't want to write a book about living with CP. I didn't want to write a book that it was in any way, you know, cliched or stereotypical. You know, obviously, you know, no one character, you know, no condition is going to be a monolith or anything like that. So anytime you write anything that you don't know about, you almost have to over research, because, you know, you kind of have to live in that character's head. So I did really have to research as much as I possibly could about the condition, probably too much, but I, you know, talked to pediatricians, I read articles, I talked to lots and lots of people with CP, watched a lot of videos. And then once the manuscript was done, I hired sensitivity readers, and then Bloomsbury also took it upon themselves, which I loved that Bloomsbury did this, to also hire some people. Yeah, just to make sure that we didn't leave anything in the manuscript.
I will say I really enjoy that you understand Harper's limitations and you know that she's living with CP, but you don't write her in a way that makes you feel sorry for her.
Yeah, she's not a damsel in distress.
Right. And I appreciate that as someone who is sick all the time, right? Like, you don't want people to look at you with pity. You don't want people to think that you can't do the things that you can do, but you sometimes need them to ask if you can do it, right? And so I think you do a really, really good job of that in the book. So thank you from me to you for that.
Oh, thanks.
So let's talk a little bit about the upcoming book in the Defy the Night series, the one we already were talking about that comes out in July, titled Destroy the Day. I know you can't give us spoilers, and honestly, I don't want spoilers because I'm so excited to read it, but what can you tell us about the book?
Oh man, it's so hard not to talk about it without spoilers.
Okay, give me a little bit.
Okay. No, I'm so excited about it. Just, you know, we've at the end of Defend the Dawn, you know, pretty much everyone is in a different place. Everyone is in a different place. You know, we have some unlikely alliances forming. You know, we definitely have some unlikely alliances forming. We have some perhaps unforeseen romances happening. And there are some things that happen that people may be distressed about, but as always, I am just going to ask my readers to trust me until the end.
Okay, good. That's good to know. Well, so, I'm very curious about their maybe unlikely alliance with the captain of the ship, right? And what he knows about the medicine. And I don't want to go into that because that is very spoilerish for the entire series. But what he knows about it, what his role is going to be. I want to know what's going on with Prince Coric's brother, the king. That's such an interesting side note, and what was happening in book 2. But I guess, one question that this one always needs to know, Whitney, is, are we going to have a happy ending?
Isn't that a spoiler?
Okay, if you don't want to tell us, that's fine. But I mean, here's the thing. This is where she and I differ greatly. I like a not happy ending because I'm like, well, that's like the real world and that's how things go. And then Whitney's like, no, they all need to magically live happily ever after. But it's just,
Right.
different readers like different things. But I mean, generally though, in all of your books I've read, even if people aren't in the place where you think they were going to go, they're in the place where they should be, I feel like. So it's a happy ending.
I think my readers will be happy with the ending.
Okay, good. And is this the last book in the series? Is it a
Yes.
trilogy? Okay. Oh, bummer. All right. Well, I know that you're working on some new stuff, which we'll get into later, but I'm not ready for the series to end yet, to be honest. So I'm excited.
Well, so Brigid, we're going to go into a couple of different types of questions. So I'm going to do a speed round with you, and then Mindy's going to ask you some tough and random questions. So first up, we've got our nerdy and dirty speed round, which I'm just going to give you some prompts, and you just tell us the first thing that comes into your mind.
I'm ready.
Okay? All right. What is the last movie you watched?
Oh, wow. I saw it in the movie theater, and now I'm like, oh, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one.
Oh yeah, I saw that
My
too.
husband said it was really good.
It was really good.
I laughed out loud
good.
a lot.
Yes.
It was pretty funny. If you could be any fictional character, who would it be?
Any fictional character? I really loved the main character, and I'm blanking on her name, in Kiss of Deception by Mary Pearson. Leah? Is it Leah?
Maybe. I'll look it up and put it in the show notes for the listeners.
What book series do you always recommend?
Kiss of Deception by Mary Pearson.
What kind of music does your main character listen to?
Oh, wow. I don't know. Like, who? Pick a character.
I'm gonna ask. I really want to know what kind of music Harper listens to.
Harper probably listens to a lot of Taylor Swift.
That's exactly what I was thinking. That's hilarious. Okay, so what about Prince Coric?
Coric probably listens to like the kind of rap music that guys in the gym listen to.
The gym bros.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. He definitely is standing in front of a mirror with a wig.
Yes.
Do that, yeah.
Okay, plays or musicals?
Musicals.
Yes, that is correct.
Absolutely.
Name a food that you refuse to eat.
Snails.
That's a good one to pass on, honestly. What paranormal power would you want to have?
Flying.
Favorite weekend activity?
Oh, this is really lame, but I really like walking the dog.
That's not lame.
I like to do that too.
Yeah.
If I can do it by myself without my kids following me, then it's real relaxing. What is your favorite holiday?
Halloween.
Favorite childhood book?
Oh, wow. All right. So I don't remember my favorite childhood book, but I loved the Llama Llama books and reading them to my boys so much. I loved them so much that when Anna Dewdney passed away, I actually cried.
Really
those
sweet.
books are so precious. I mean,
Have you watched any of the episodes on
Yes, we watched that until my kids kind of outgrew them, but yeah.
Yeah. I like watching those. My kids don't even have to be around. Yeah. I'll just turn it on. What are you currently reading, or what is the last book you finished and loved?
Right now, I am reading The Breakaway by Jennifer Weiner, and I am absolutely loving it.
That is all over Instagram right now.
Yeah.
Is it really?
I've seen a lot about that too recently, actually.
Yeah, I can't. I don't want to go look for it because I don't want to get any spoilers, but I really cannot put it down.
And last in this speed round, what is a guilty pleasure for you?
Ooh, guilty pleasure. Probably after the kids get out of school, probably sitting on the front porch and having a glass of wine where I can't hear them like screaming and tearing apart their book bags.
That sounds
I
amazing.
feel you on that.
That's very similar guilty pleasure to Brigid. I just call it my nighttime routine.
Just mommy needs to unwind a little bit.
Yeah, we've all been there for sure. Okay, so we're going to move into the 3 tough questions. Okay.
Oh, all right.
They're not that tough. Sometimes they are. I don't know. So I'd love to know a scene that you edited out of one of your books that you really, really wish you could have kept in.
Oh, see, that's tough because I usually keep them like
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I want to keep them, I usually fight and find a way to keep them. I'm trying to think if there's any that I ever like cut. No.
Is there a scene that you wish you would have, now that you have published the books that you are now are like, man, I wish I kind of would have added this. Is there anything like that?
I do wish in the second book of the Cursebreaker series, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, I wish I had some chapters from Prince Ren's point of view, and anyone who has read that book knows
I would
why.
like those.
Yeah.
All right. And the next one is, what is a super specific detail about any one of your characters that doesn't affect the story, but just really makes you love them?
Oh, wow. That is a hard question. This is so stupid.
We love those answers.
Those are the best ones.
So, no, it's so stupid. I can't even use this answer. I mean, I can. So oftentimes when I am like deep in a book and like I am out shopping with my kids or like running errands or whatever, I will like walk through a grocery store and I'll be like, oh, that's something that Gray would buy. Or, oh,
I love that.
I actually love that answer.
Yeah, I love that
It's so fun.
Like, Ren would really like that kind of pasta. And it's like, it's so stupid.
It's
No,
not
I
stupid
love
at all.
that.
That's
Yeah.
great.
You know your characters. That's
Yeah.
what makes your books so good, right?
Oh,
You
thanks.
know what you're writing about.
Yes. All right. So what is the book character, or who is a book character that you would want to meet in real life, and how would you spend that time with them?
One of mine or just any character in ever?
Whichever.
All right, well, I'll do one of mine. I mean, I would probably say, I'd probably say Harper, because she just seems like she'd be so much fun to hang out with. We go horseback riding. I mean, it would be cool. In Emberfall, of course, not like here, because I go to DC.
Well, and she'd make sure you didn't take crap from anybody while you
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. I love Harper, by the way. I loved that book.
Thanks.
So now we're going to move into 4 random questions.
Okay.
All right. You share your love of CrossFit on social media. What is your favorite exercise to do, and what is your biggest accomplishment in that community?
So I would say my favorite is probably deadlift. And probably my biggest accomplishment, I finally got a pull-up this year. And I mean, it's taken me years to get a pull-up. So
I think that is like CrossFit. The whole thing is so impressive. I really do. I think I'm so in awe of people who can stick with that.
I mean, it's got a community like
Yeah.
Instagram does.
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
I love it.
Up in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's super impressive. Okay, what scene from a book inspires you on a daily basis?
Oh, wow. I would, again, not to go back to Mary Pearson's Kiss of Deception, which
Always
if I
go
haven't
back.
mentioned, I love it. There is a scene near the end of the book, which I do think about often, where the princess has to dig some graves, and it's just a very dark moment for her. And she's kind of been taken prisoner, and she really wants to dig graves for some people. I'm trying not to spoil anything. And they, the people who've taken her prisoner aren't going to let her. And she's basically like, then, I'm just going to kill myself right here. Like, if you don't let me dig these graves. And the people who've taken her prisoner, like it's like against their religion or something. I don't remember fully the details. And ultimately, not only do they let her do it, but they end up helping her. And it's a really moving scene and a really poignant scene, because of the way that, she talks to them and explains why it's so important to her. And so probably that one.
I love that. It's like standing up for what you believe in.
Yes.
And persevering through it and making sure it gets done. I love that. Have you ever seen a ghost or had any paranormal experiences?
Yes. Oh my God. The house we used to live in, which bizarrely was across the street from where I live right now. We moved, we moved like 3 months into the pandemic. We had lived right. Like didn't, right. We used to live in this tiny little Cape Cod house that was like 70 years old. That was our starter home that we bought when we first got married, and then we had 3 kids, and then the pandemic happened and we were locked in there together, and we were like, get out. But we that house had so many creepy things happen in it, constantly things rolling across the floor, like doors would open in the middle of the night. Sometimes we would see stuff on the camera, like light would move across the floor. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's creepy.
That's a big nope for me.
I take it nothing followed you from the house then?
Nope.
Good deal.
Do you ever knock on the door and say, hey, do you see anything?
No, I've never told them. They're
probably just wishing someone else knew.
Yeah. They're like, I don't want to tell the neighbors. They're going to think I'm crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So the last random question is, what is your zombie apocalypse plan?
I don't know. To ask my husband to help me to make sure my glasses don't break. I don't know.
That's a good one. I think
that is a good one, honestly.
I would panic if my glasses broke and there wasn't
you can't
an
see.
obstetrician to,
Someone said that to me a year ago.
I'm not an optometrist. Neither of us were right.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone said that to me a year ago. They were like, if my glasses broke in the zombie apocalypse, I would be lost. And that was a fear I had never had.
Yeah.
And now I'm like,
great. Anxiety unlocked.
I'm like, I'm never throwing a pair of glasses away.
Yeah, you have to worry about all kinds of things. I watched The Walking Dead for several seasons, and it was like, well, what about this? Like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Like, there's all kinds of day-to-day stuff that
why I didn't like watching it. Because I was like, oh, here's all the things you can be scared about.
Got to be ready. So Destroy the Day is the last book in the Defy the Night series. So what are you writing? What are you working on now? Well, not now that it's complete, but
so right now, I'm putting the finishing touches on the sequel to Forging Silver into Stars, which is the spinoff series from the Cursebreaker series. And I can't reveal the title or the release date yet, because we haven't revealed those. And then I have some other secret stuff in the works that I can't talk about yet, but I'm very excited about.
It's funny because one of the things I put on here in our notes was ask her about the secret project she mentioned at Imaginarium. So I'm assuming you still can't tell us.
I can't. I'm sorry.
That's okay. When do you get to make those announcements?
When they tell me.
It's TBD.
Yes.
So I'm part of Helena Hunting's group on Facebook, and every time she says something, like somebody will ask a question, she's like, I can't tell you, and they're like, well, thanks for nothing. And she always does hashtag you're welcome for nothing.
So we saw you at Imaginarium. We were lucky enough to have a table next to you in one of the rooms. Do you have any other events or festivals coming up in the next several months?
Yep, I'm going to be at the Harrisburg Book Festival. That's coming up in October. I believe it's I don't know the date off the top of my head, but it's like the middle of October. I think it's like October 15th, right? Maybe the 21st. It's right around there. And that's in Pennsylvania. I'm very excited about that. There are a lot of other big name authors who are coming. I'm super excited. That's the only other one I have. I mean, I'm going to be in Prague in the Czech Republic. If you have any listeners there, I'm going to be at Humbug Fest.
We do, yeah.
Do you? That's amazing. Yeah, I'm going to be at Humbug Fest in the beginning of October. I'm really excited about that. I've never been to Prague before.
That's awesome.
And yep, those are my two big ones coming up.
Will you be at Imaginarium next summer?
As of right now, it's not on my calendar, but it's still a little early for next May.
Yeah. We'll keep our fingers crossed then. So where can we buy your books, and where would you prefer readers to buy your books?
So my books are available anywhere books are sold. For personalized signed copies, I do have a local indie. If anybody wants a personalized signed copy, they do ship internationally. And that is Park Books in Severna Park, Maryland. But anywhere people can access books legally is absolutely fine with me. And library checkouts are always welcome. That does support authors as well.
Yeah. Where can we find you online?
I am on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. Is it still called on X?
X.
That's so weird.
I think we should just keep calling it Twitter. Yeah, it's just.
I'm going to be a rebel.
That's just crazy. So the podcast is called Our Nerdiest Thing, and we love to talk about the fandoms that we're a part of, the things that we love to nerd out about, and we end every episode talking about our nerdiest thing of that week that can be book related. It doesn't have to be book related. So we would love to know, first, are you a part of any fandoms? Is there anything that you nerd out about? And what is your nerdiest thing of the week?
The one thing that I really do nerd out about, I mean, it's not nerdy. I mean, I definitely nerd out about dogs, especially German Shepherds, CrossFit, way too much. I spend way too much listening to my husband talk about AI, which makes for fascinating conversations right now because with me being. Yeah,
I have a question. How do you feel about that as a creator?
Well, it's, because he is an IT guy and he's all like, it's amazing what AI can do. Like, this is going to revolutionize technology. And I'm like, honey.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of really, really fascinating conversations. And I do, much like everything else, there is a huge pendulum swing. There was a fascinating conversation on Reddit recently where somebody was asking for advice about their query letter, about how to, basically they were just asking for advice on how to, make sure like all their punctuation and things like that in the query letter were correct. And all of these people were suggesting, use Grammarly, in Gmail, it'll check your punctuation, if you, download this other software. And somebody said, use ChatGPT to edit it. And somebody else was like, all of these people were downvoting it and saying, don't use ChatGPT, AI is terrible. And I think, and this is one of the things that my husband and I have conversations about, really Grammarly and all of these other software, they're also using versions of AI to generate this grammar checking and the punctuation checking and things like that. So, I think some of it is a fundamental misunderstanding. But as far as like using AI to write books,
right. Yeah. I have a serious issue too. Yeah. With some writers using AI for their character art in their book covers.
Oh yeah.
I'm an artist. And so
absolutely.
And actually there's an art team I'm on, and she's an up and coming author. She's really fantastic, very sweet. And she posted, look at this new character art I created in Mid-Journey. And I just messaged her separately and I said, listen, I need you to understand why this hurts artists. And she immediately took it down and like messaged the group. There's like 20 of us in there. And she's like, I had no idea that this takes from other artwork. And so I think sometimes just the education part of it is really important. Instead of us being like, we're not going to support this person. I think sometimes people just don't know.
People don't know. Yes. because I see it all the time, especially like teenagers, and, you know, very young adults who, you know, who are trying to create like character art just for fun,
Right.
just for fun, you know, things like that. You know, because once the software is out there, there's no reeling it in.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, I do think that it's going to be very interesting to see what comes like with the court cases and stuff like that right now. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah. We got you totally off track about your
Sorry.
nerdiest thing of the week. We talked about what we nerd out about it, but I interrupted you before you could talk about your nerdiest thing of the week. My apologies.
Oh, no, sorry. My nerdiest thing of the week. I don't know.
It could be that AI conversation.
I mean, actually, it probably could. I feel
we
yes,
just had about
yes,
it.
I think that should be it.
That happens to us sometimes too. I messaged them earlier today. I was like, I think my nerdiest thing of the week is going to be the shirt that I'm wearing, because I've worn it for like 3 weeks in a row. Not every day, but every time we've recorded. But
It's a
yeah,
good
well,
shirt. It looks comfy.
thank you so
now
much.
the
It is.
listeners, every time they watch a video, they're going to be like, Whitney's wearing that shirt
There,
again.
there it is. Same old shirt. Well, thank you so much for being on with us tonight. It has been just a pleasure to talk with you. You are so sweet and kind and fun
Aw.
to talk to. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all. This was
appreciate it.
really so much fun. It was so good to see you all again.
Thanks,
Yeah,
you
nice
too.
to see
Hopefully
you
we'll see
too.
you in 2024 at an event.
I hope so. Have a good one.
You
Thank
too.
you. You
Bye,
too.
Bridget.
Have a good night.
Bye all.